What is the financial risk being posed by our politics right now?
Oh, God.
Or is there one?
The financial risk being posed by our politics right now is obvious and profound, although unlikely. And that financial risk is a catastrophic loss of confidence in the integrity of rule of law in the largest and most powerful and deepest capital market on earth. So that is the financial risk. Right now, the totality of the risk is manifesting in a face jamming of the US dollar as a referendum on the catastrophic loss of confidence in the currency on a relative basis as a result of the political behavior of the United States of America. So the reason I say it's relatively unlikely is, again, you can only abandon a currency or an economy if you have a reasonable alternative to it. And much as we saw in the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, and really many times, there is no viable alternative, which basically allows America to behave in a fairly reckless and insane political fashion with limited consequences. But the risk for sure is a loss of confidence in the rule of law and the value of the currency.
Okay. Mr. Batista, would you like to chime in?
We had GDP today. It was 3.8. I'm not a macro person or anything else.
You actually have GDP today? I thought it was just producer price index.
I thought it was just the PCE.
That shows how all three of us follow.
Yeah, right. We had...
Because if it was GDP, it'd be like, me.
Yeah, that's true. What do we have today?
Well, anyway, forget about what we had.
We had GDP, third estimate at 8:30 today. They revised it to it's 3.8 now, which we never had.
Pretty bad, isn't it?
No, well, three-ish. A little over 3 is usually.
Anyway, who cares GDP? What's your answer the question?
Well, what's with the evasiveness? You already answered the question.
So what I was going...
The answer is in the end. The non-answer is the answer.
No, what I was going to give you was what we had in past administrations was 2% or under, which they would say was the new normal, even though 3% or over used to be the normal. So it's all perception. Because all I'm saying is it's just how all the media wants to spin it. It's just a spin. That's all I'm saying.
So you're saying
So I'm saying the financial policies are just.
You're saying a 15% decline in the U.S. currency is that's just a perception issue. That's not a mathematical fact.
No, that's a mathematical fact, and then you will say that the stock market is making up for that, and you'll say that most of the people that don't benefit from the stock market, it's all perception. All I'm saying is it's just all perception. It's how everybody perceives the politics in the media, good or bad. So you watch one place, you get one thing. You watch another place, you get another thing. That's what I said.
What'd you do to your hand?
I fell off a fence.
Well, if he gets out of line today, Dylan, I'm going to break the other hand.
Tom said I wasn't pulling his bag fast enough when I was in New York, and he grabbed me by my wrist and he fractured it.
This guy, he's right.
What I would like to say about this.
It's just not the new normal is all I'm trying to say. Like when interest rates were 0 and we couldn't get GDP over 2%.
What I'd like to say about this, to follow up on what Dylan said, and to say dispute a little about what you said, is this is not about perception, because I am not watching any news or anything. I'm watching it play out in real time. That's not news, okay? When the President of the United States gets up in front of in the UN and embarrasses this country.
Not just the UN, specifically the leaders of every country on earth.
And embarrasses, I don't need anybody to tell me that this guy was a demented idiot, okay? It's embarrassing, okay? So this has nothing to do with perception. I'm not listening.
You had 0% interest rates and printing money like crazy, and you had a 2% GDP, which is well below
I'm not so
the
sure
norm.
that you're right about any of that, but I'm not going to argue with you about GDP because I don't think that's the valid argument here.
I just had it today, so revision.
The valid argument here is, are we being made to look like fools in front of the rest of the world? And when will that come back to haunt us? I think that's reasonable. All right, let's go to the next question. Is there a possibility that we are underestimating AI's potential?
I mean, of course, there's always a possibility that you're under or overestimating anything, especially something that is an entirely new thing. And we have no idea really what the ultimate consequences of AI will be. Although I do think it ends with murder drones, but that's just up me. Setting that aside, the interesting thing will be if when one of these countries, I know we've sort of seen it rattled about a little bit, one of these smaller nation states makes AI their president. And AI does a good, and then let's say AI actually does a good job, whatever that means. And all of a sudden, Montenegro is the most prosperous, least corrupt country on earth.
Mr. Batista, is there a chance?
Prime Minister, artificial intelligence.
You're dropping the first Montenegro reference. Tony, is there a chance?
Come on, we're going to underestimate everything we do. I mean, that's why you get swings in the overall market and swings in just the amount of companies that get formed. So we're going to overestimate it to the upside, and we're going to overestimate it to the downside too. I don't think we've seen the highs in AI. I don't think we've seen the lows in AI. I think they're going to go a lot further and in both directions. I mean, look at how the internet was. You mentioned it last time we had a question. Some of this, the leaders in bringing the internet to us aren't even here anymore. So,
hey Beth, the question is, do we underestimate, right?
Mm-hmm.
AI?
Yeah. Underestimate AI. That is a question.
Yeah.
Possibly we're going to underestimate.
So is there a possibility that we're underestimating AI's potential? I think there's a better possibility that we're underestimating quantum computing's potential. That
you didn't like quantum computing back when it first came out.
You didn't even know what quantum computing was.
Right. Nor did I. You said I don't like it.
I think there's a chance that we're underestimating quantum computing's potential. I don't know if there's. I feel like there's been so much hype on AI. And the expectations are so great. I'm not sure that we're underestimating. I think we're overvaluing it. I will tell you that. I don't know that we're underestimating it, or I don't think we are, but I think we are overvaluing it. Let's go to the next slide. When Thomas Friedman wrote "The World is Flat," he emphasized the division of labor across the world and how it made economies more efficient. Was he wrong? Is it possible being too efficient is a threat to the labor markets?
In reverse order. Efficiency, as interpreted by technology, if technology is the metaphor for efficiency, meaning more robots and more technology, by definition, that reduces the need for labor, and investment in technology displaces investment in labor, which then creates a further consolidation of wealth for those who either own the means of production or own the means of technology at the expense of everybody else. It's one of those things where if you look at the world as flat, basically the poorest people in the world, the people that are in the poorest, let's say 20% of the world population, have generally benefited and frequently benefited tremendously from the flatness of the world in that context. The middle classes of the world, especially in the United States, have suffered terribly. And the wealthy have benefited too. So it's good at the extremes and it's bad in the middle. It's unsustainable.
Okay. Mr. Batista, interesting question.
I'm going to go with my own experience in my own business, which we talked about a little bit this morning, and how computers, were going to take away my job, which they did in some degree as a floor trader. And I thought it was going to kill the business, like there was going to be no more trading business. And it's never been bigger or more robust. Completely wrong on mine and many thousands of other floor traders' opinion of what was going to happen to the market. So did it create, to Dylan's point, more lower wage jobs and maybe benefit the more wealthy? I don't think so. It created a different industry. You now have people that are scalping, just different skill sets. Nah, I don't think. No, I think he's wrong. Yeah, I think he's wrong.
Can you put the question up, Beth, one more time? When Thomas Friedman wrote The World is Flat, he emphasized the division of labor across the world and how it made economies more efficient. Was he wrong? Or is it possible that being too efficient is a threat to labor markets? I'm going to start I'm going to leave this up here for a second. I'll go through this. First of all, was he wrong about the economies becoming more efficient? Of course not. But is it possible for efficiency to be a threat to labor markets? And I would argue absolutely not, because between AI, between what's happening, with all technology, globalization, decentralization, and everything else, the labor markets over time, this is how you create even more opportunity. So no, I don't think this is a threat to labor markets at all. I think this is actually going to be good for labor. The division of labor across the world, because it's flat, because economies are more efficient, there's no doubt that that's a fact. Economies are more efficient. Everybody's economy. How can you compete on a global basis if your economy is not more efficient? You're supposed to always get more efficient with technology, and especially with AI, you have to become more efficient. The question is, how are we going to redistribute or rediversify all those sectors and all that labor? And I think that's just a matter of time. So I don't see this as a bad thing. I see this as a good thing. Let's go to the next slide, Beth. Is a government shutdown a real risk this time? If it happens, what is the risk? What is the risk no one is talking about, or isn't there one? Dylan?
There is no risk. This is an idiotic and tired concept. The risk is the disruption to government employees who get the hose job every time the politicians pull this moronic stunt. There should not. This whole thing of having these caps and these rollovers is maybe the dumbest thing that exists in our government. And in fact, some of you may know that I became somewhat internet famous back in 2011 for expressing myself with a certain degree of emotion in a public space that was a cable network.
You went viral, Dylan, before there was virality.
That's what the kids tell me. And the trigger for that particular set of comments and expression of sentiment was driven specifically. I mean, there was an accrual of prior frustrations, mind you, but the trigger was what I perceived to be a profoundly stupid debate about exactly this topic, which is, you have some more. It's just used as it's used as a political cudgel by both political parties as a way to try to negotiate extractions of resources for one person's agenda or another person's agenda. But whoever's agenda it is, it's always at the American people's expense, both in terms of the giveaways and takeaways that happen in the negotiation. And then the penalty that's paid for the shutdown is for the people that are the least able to endure the shutdown itself. So it's like, give me what I want, or I'm going to smack this 4-year-old in the face. And you're like, okay, well, why does the 4-year-old get smacked in the face if I don't give you tax breaks for cherry farmers in Wyoming or whatever the stupid thing is that they're arguing about? There is no greater example of the avarice and malice of the U.S. government than the fabricated use of a false debt ceiling as a negotiating tool to extract resources for constituents at the expense of the American people. If you were to create a lead anecdote for evidence of the vast and malicious corruption of the American government, this would be it.
Wow. Oof. Obviously,
I mean, I don't really have an opinion.
Obviously, this is not your first rodeo.
I've seen a few debt ceilings, and I've been up close to the whole situation. It's horrifying. Shame on them all.
Just the question itself is a government shutdown.
Like, if the three of us have an argument, why should Nick Batista get punched in the face? He didn't do
Agreed.
anything.
I'm not going to argue anything you just said. But go ahead, Tony.
Is a government shutdown a
real risk?
What's sorry?
Is the government shutdown a real risk?
Is the government shutdown a real risk this time? Even the question itself implies that it wasn't a risk in past
Another
times.
792 times.
Right. So there's no risk now. I will say, from my own experience, I'm going to go into the late 70s when New York was bankrupt. For a period of time, almost, I believe, a year or so, they did stop hiring police and fire and sanitation and transport, the CTA and stuff like that. So it does get ugly in that point of view. But is there any real risk? No. To Dylan's point, they'll raise the number, unfortunately, and not do anything to correct it, unfortunately. But no, there is no real risk this time or any other time.
So, yeah. So is the government showdown a real risk this time?
Shutdown, not showdown.
Shutdown.
I like showdown.
We're going to have showdown.
More theatrical.
Is the government shutdown a real risk this time? It hasn't been a real risk. And I've been listening to this same story because Vanette has probably covered it for the last 15 years. And prior to that, for 25 years on the trading floor and wherever, it's never a real risk.
It's a great soundbite, though.
It is a good soundbite. The problem is that even if it happened, whatever, the risk that no one talks about, it's just the amount of resources and the distraction and the credibility, the integrity that it causes, just not even the shutdown, just the debate going back and forth. It's like Dylan said, it is a literal waste of resources for this country to keep dealing with this every single time. It's just, and nobody wants to hear about it. So I think
it'd be one thing, like if they shut down the government, so then they stop paying veteran benefits, or they stop paying healthcare for poor people. That's what the government shutdown means. What it should mean is the Congress stops getting paid.
That's what Warren Buffett always used to say, and it was a great.
Why does healthcare for the poorest people the thing that gets shut down instead of the salary of the people that created the problem?
I mean, if you remember, I'm just paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote. But what Warren Buffett used to say is, I could solve the government, budget issues and shutdown issues.
One liner.
And his one liner was, listen, here's what happens. Either you figure this out or nobody gets paid. Nobody in the House, nobody in the Senate gets paid until you figure this out.
So the staff gets paid, the staffers
gets paid, but
you
none of the politicians get paid until you figure this out. He goes, then it's solved.
He said he could stop the deficit in 5 minutes by passing a law that would make members of Congress ineligible for re-election if the deficit exceeded 3% of GDP.
There you go. Like that. Okay. I mean, it's a fun line,
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Yeah. All right.
Good. All right.
It's just like you could end financial crisis if you just said that the partners in every bank have to retain 20% of the credit risk of whatever they extend with personal liability. If the partners at JP Morgan and Goldman, not that they even have partners anymore, had to retain the default risk of the credit they extend, I can guarantee you'd never see another financial crisis as long as
I just like that Tom will quote Warren Buffett talking about the GDP, but not Tony Batista. All right, well, listen, thanks.
Different, but
thanks, Dylan. I appreciate your time. I really, really do. We're going to take a quick. We're going to take no.
I want to say something about that because Dylan, you bring up an interesting point. For a long time, boards you'd have to buy directors and officers insurance.
Yeah.
If you're on a board, but for so many years, because the board of directors would have, some liability, right? That's why, that's the only reason you need insurance, because you have some liability. But we never had $1 trillion companies before. How
now, brown cow?
How do you accept a position on the board of NVIDIA? Okay, assuming they never have an issue, but how do you accept the position on the board of NVIDIA?
Oh, it's impossible. The only way you could do retained risk would be you would have to force companies to be smaller.
Exactly, and no insurance company is going to write a $4 trillion policy because they're out of business. So,
but that's why too big to fail goes hand in hand with the risk transfer. Too big to fail is the device by which risk gets moved away from management.
And it's also the reason that that whole idea it's just not. It's no longer feasible. It doesn't make any sense anymore.
But back in the day, if you were a partner at Salmon Brothers, you were a partner
of course
in '73. Like if you were the partner at Salmon Brothers, like you had an interview. You're like, don't risk all the money on no income, no paperwork lending.
One of the things that I like about private equity, and there's not a lot of things I like about private equity, but one of the things I like is that every partner has to take a piece of every deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like they vote on every deal.
Right.
And if you don't, if the private equity firm
if the deal goes, everybody has to play.
Everybody has to play. If the
skin in the game.
You have to have skin in the game. I feel like I don't care that a board system, that they have personal liability. I really don't care. What I do care is that you can't have a board where the board doesn't have skin in the game. And I have been part of companies or involved in boards where the board has no skin in the game. It drives me out of my mind. I don't care if you take the liability. I think that's kind of crazy in today's world. But you have to have skin in the game.
I just use that as a metaphor for you.
No, I understand. I'm just suggesting that the future of boards you have to have skin in the game. There's no conflict. There's no conflict to have skin in the game. If you don't have skin in the game, that's the conflict.
The conflict to not have a skin.
That's right.
If you're not subscribed, subscribe right here. And if you want to meet me and the team in person at our next live event, hit the link at the top of the description.